Hello, and thank you for joining us for Wisconsin Parkinson Association's educational video series. I'm Jeremy Otte, Director of Outreach and Education with Wisconsin Parkinson Association. WPA provides hope, community, support, and resources for people with Parkinson's and their loved ones. Today, we are talking with Michelle McDonagh, a registered dietitian with Froedtert Hospital in Milwaukee. Michelle is going to discuss how nutrition can affect your Parkinson's symptoms both positively and negatively. Welcome, Michelle. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for inviting me for this chat today. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're excited to have you. Do you want to give us just a little background about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am a registered dietitian, and as dietitians, we're trained to evaluate and review the current research and science as it applies to nutrition and translate that information into practical advice for everyday life for the population. So I completed my training at the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland, and then I came here to Milwaukee and furthered my education for a couple of years at Mount Mary University with a certification in dietetics then as well. And then I started working at Froedtert, and I've been there for the past 12 years. So at Froedtert, I'm deployed in a few of our outpatient clinics. I work in our cystic fibrosis clinic. I work in our ALS clinic with Lou Gehrig's disease. And then I work in the general internal medicine clinic where I see a variety of people for varying conditions, but it's that clinic where I get to work with people living with Parkinson's.
Excellent. Well, welcome to Wisconsin. 12 years now. I'm sure that time has gone fast. So one of the things I hear a lot from people, how does food and medications interact with one another, especially within Parkinson's disease?
Sure. So generally speaking, there are a lot of medications that it's recommended that you take the medication on an empty stomach. And that's for physiological reasons. Like when we eat a meal, it can take anywhere from 1 to 3 hours for that meal to leave the stomach and travel through the digestive tract. So, and that depends on the composition of the meal and also the individual's GI tract. So for those medications to work effectively, you should adhere to those guidelines to take on an empty stomach. So then thinking within Parkinson's specifically, for carbidopa, levodopa, or Sinemet, it's recommended to take 30 to 60 minutes before eating to maximize the efficiency. First of all, just for the emptying from the stomach rationale, but secondly, the carbidopa levodopa has an interaction with the protein that is in food, and most meals do contain a significant amount of protein. Protein, when we eat, we consume it. Well, first of all, protein foods are meat, fish, eggs, nuts, seeds, beans, and dairy products contain significant amounts of protein. So then when we consume those foods and they're digested, they're broken down into their smallest form, which is amino acids. And these amino acids have to be absorbed from the intestine into the blood, and then again travel through the blood, and they have functions in the brain and elsewhere throughout the body. So they have to cross that brain-blood barrier. Meanwhile, the carbidopa levodopa also travels along this same pathway. So if we consume the protein, which is broken down into the amino acids, at the same time as we take the medication, we're then competing for sites of absorption and carriers to the brain. So the absorption and efficiency of the Sinemet is affected if we take protein foods at the same time.
Great explanation. I think that really helps people. I think it's the number one thing I hear from people all the time is, why do I have to wait 30 minutes or 60 minutes before eating? I think that's a great breakdown of why that is. One of the other questions I get a lot of, are there certain foods that maybe help my symptoms? You know, I have Parkinson's disease. Are there foods that maybe improve the overall symptoms or my overall health?
So when I think about that question, the first thing that comes to mind would be like the on-off fluctuations. So I want to kind of expand upon that protein point a little further. So early on in Parkinson's, the brain is producing dopamine, and then the carbidopa-levodopa medication is just boosting that. But later on, as Parkinson's progresses, the brain is producing less and less dopamine. So we are more reliant on the medication and the effectiveness of the medication at that time. So if somebody's having on-off fluctuations, more of that, something to consider is the diet and looking at the protein sources in the diet. So that's something I would encourage people to talk about with a neurologist to see if they feel that looking at diet would be a good intervention for you as an individual. And if it's decided that that would be a good intervention, you know, to meet with a dietitian to look at your diet and look at the protein and how we can kind of reorganize things, because we can't just eliminate protein. We need it for so many functions in the body. It's a structural component throughout the body from a cellular level on up. It's part of enzymes. It's part of antibodies. We need it for immunity. Obviously a part of muscles. So we definitely need protein, but there are a couple of approaches that are popular in order to help with the on-off fluctuations. So the first one being what's been termed the protein redistribution diet. So you would meet with a dietitian and they would, you know, come up with a protein goal specific to you. And then what we do is minimize the amount of protein that's consumed throughout the day and get the bulk of the protein requirements in the evening. So low protein breakfast, low protein lunch to keep the fluctuations to a minimum. And then in the evening, making sure protein needs are met, but perhaps for that individual, you know, if their mobility is slowed in the evening time, it's less of a concern. So that would be the first approach. The second approach is looking at a ratio of carbohydrate to protein. So we look at grams of protein, grams of carbohydrate in a meal, and we try and increase the amount of carbohydrate so we look at a ratio of 7 grams of carb to 1 gram of protein. And what that does when you design a meal with that kind of ratio is it stimulates a larger insulin release within the body. And what that can do is remove some of those protein parts, those amino acids from the blood, and help with the absorption of the carbidopa-levodopa medication. So, and for some people, even just that adjustment can be enough to control their fluctuations and allow them to get more protein throughout the day. So that's really the protein focus there. The other dietary approach to help with symptoms, I mean, one of the major complaints is constipation. So thinking about that specifically, constipation can be aggravated by, you know, a side effect of medications. There may be slowed motility through the gut, which can lead to that. But also, I mean, it could be as simple as not consuming enough fiber and not getting enough fluids. So the general recommendations for fiber for females is 25 grams a day. For males is 38 grams a day. And the average American consumes 15 grams. So we're a little south of where we need to be in general. So picking those high fiber fruits and vegetables, artichokes, pears, making sure you're consuming the skins of the potatoes, and beans, legumes, all of that stuff to try and maximize fiber intake, and then making sure that you're getting enough caffeine-free fluid as well.
And I think that's important, Michelle.
So those were the...
Sorry, you broke up there a minute. I think it's important you mentioned the liquids, not taking just caffeine, but having water and other things to help with the absorption, the fiber, and everything else moving.
Right.
As you talk about proteins, you mentioned dairy. And I've heard some people are worried about too much dairy, not enough dairy. can you touch on how dairy impacts Parkinson's and maybe overall health when it comes to nutrition?
Sure. So looking at the studies specifically surrounding Parkinson's and dairy, there were population studies that looked at dairy consumption, and they found that the high dairy consumption group had a higher risk of developing Parkinson's than the low consumption group. So really, there was an association. It wasn't a cause and effect relationship. There was association with if people were consuming larger amounts of dairy, were they more likely to develop Parkinson's? And it seemed so. But this focused more on the progressing to developing Parkinson's, not people that actually already had Parkinson's. And there's a couple of theories behind this. One being that perhaps there was pesticide load in the dairy, and the other being that it affected the uric acid level in the body, which may have a protective effect against Parkinson's. So there could be a relationship there. As far as for people living with Parkinson's right now, there really isn't enough evidence out there to say that they should avoid dairy or eliminate that from their diet. And I'm hesitant to, I would hesitate to recommend that anyway, just given the concern about bone health and how necessary calcium in the diet is. Dairy is our most efficient source of calcium. So I'm hesitant to recommend people eliminate dairy. Of course, if somebody selects to do that, they can look at other sources. They can look at fortified soy milk, they can look at fortified rice milk, orange juice, breakfast cereals, and so on. But really, to get there quickly, dairy is the easiest way. So there isn't enough evidence to say anything really definitive about dairy and Parkinson's when somebody has Parkinson's.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. A couple years ago, you spoke at our Parkinson's disease, our annual symposium, and you talked a little bit about foods that can be neuroprotective. Can you touch a little bit on what that means and what foods you might think have been shown that could be neuroprotective?
Sure, yes. This is my exciting time to talk about fruits and vegetables and really push for them. So we do recommend that people get a variety of fruits and vegetables. You know, maybe have heard that term, eat the rainbow. And that term comes from the fact that within fruits and vegetables, these colors signify a variety of components that we can get that are really, really beneficial to health. So we push for eating a variety of fruits and vegetables and getting at least 5 servings a day. So to hone in on specifically with Parkinson's, there are components that are in food called phytonutrients, or phytochemicals is the other term. And these are compounds that are known to have a benefit for health. So with Parkinson's in mind, one of them is called the anthocyanidins. And that is, it may enhance the survival of dopamine cells in the brain. So that's the potential benefit there. Ways to get this in your diet are to look for those blue and purple colors in the diet. So blueberries, blackberries, grapes, the list goes on, cherries, eggplant, black currants. So trying to include those as much as you can. Another component of the diet is the antioxidants that are widely found in fruits and vegetables. So examples of those are vitamin A, vitamin E, selenium, and beta-carotene, vitamin C. Sorry, I'll stop talking. My list was growing too long. But what these do is there are chemical reactions in the body where called oxidation. And when oxidation happens, it produces these free radical species that can cause damage on a cellular level. So including a variety of fruits and vegetables that have antioxidants can reduce this. So I would make a push for the cruciferous vegetables in particular, because those are so rich in antioxidants. And those are the broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, Brussels sprouts, that group are really beneficial. And the third thing I did want to mention too was the omega-3 fatty acids. Those are widely known to be beneficial from a heart health standpoint, because they're anti-inflammatory, they're vasodilators, they reduce the bad cholesterol, the LDL, and they increase the HDL cholesterol. But they may also delay the loss of cognitive function. So here that really makes sense. So sources of that in plant foods would be flaxseed, chia seed, walnuts, canola oil, and then looking more specifically at the DHA brand of omega-3 fatty acid, that's docosahexaenoic acid. That's found in seafood, and it's even added in prenatal supplements for brain development and growth, and that is known to help with cognitive function too. So including oily fish a couple of times a week is widely touted. So salmon, trout, mackerel, herring, those can be really beneficial. Tuna, I never said tuna. So those can really be helpful too.
That's a great list. I mean, eat the fruits, eat the vegetables, have some fish. I think of this time of year, we just had Easter, and I think my kids think the rainbow means you eat as many jelly beans as possible. And I think you probably just disproved that. But I do think it is, we're in the safer at home order right now, and I think our diets have not been great. So I think just reminding us about the fruits, the vegetables, and all the different things you can have that maybe help with being neuroprotective, I think is really important. So I appreciate you sharing that very extensive list for people.
Right. And when I think about that, how would I translate that to being stuck at home? Well, we can use those frozen raspberries and blueberries. We can use that in a smoothie. We can use the canned tuna to get that oily fish. So even though we're not under the optimal circumstances right now, I mean, we can still kind of pursue what we're trying to do and maintain. Absolutely.
I think those are great opportunities, and I think you're right. There's a lot of things at home we can use, so I appreciate you putting that out there. One of the other questions I get a lot of at support groups, we're talking about nutrition, we're talking about foods, some of the neuroprotective foods. People want to do the shortcut. Supplements, vitamins. I want to get my omega-3 in a vitamin or a supplement. Can they be helpful? What things should I consider before starting a supplement or vitamin? So what are your thoughts on that, I guess?
Well, I do have thoughts on that, lots of thoughts. So with a general multivitamin can be an okay kind of catch-all safety net for the diet. But, supplements can't replace diet. So I really would push the goal of a balanced, nutritious diet, like we've been talking about, as the forefront of getting your vitamins and your minerals. Fine, we could do a general multivitamin and mineral just in case. That would be okay. Where I get concerned is when people start adding a growing list of supplements, and really we don't know if those are as beneficial as when they're compounded in food. They're not. But the risk is, what potential interactions is this growing list of supplements going to have with medications? I mean, even something as benign seeming as like an iron supplement, if somebody has anemia, that can interact with a ton of medications. So really, it's something that if you're thinking about taking supplements, then really you should discuss with your care team just to make sure that it's going to be okay and it's not going to reduce the effectiveness of your medication. The one supplement that I feel like is really worth looking into and assessing is a vitamin D supplement. Living where we do, we should be getting tested annually, our vitamin D level, and the optimal time is to get the worst case scenario. So test our vitamin D level at the end of winter, like January, February, March, and then you can see how bad it really is without the sun here. And then most people, you know, well, I shouldn't say most, a lot of people will need to supplement. The studies I've seen in Parkinson's, 55% of the people studied with Parkinson's disease were vitamin D deficient. So they needed to supplement. So I would encourage people to get tested annually, either with their primary or their neurologist, and start supplementing. Usually, if somebody is deficient, they need somewhere in the range from 1,000 to 5,000 units of vitamin D3 every day. So
that's a good point. I've seen there was research maybe 5-10 years ago that the farther away from the equator, the worse the vitamin D levels were, and the higher the incidence of neurological conditions, including Parkinson's disease and others. So I think you're right. And I'm looking out my window now. We had snow yesterday. It's dark and hazy today. There's just no sun in Wisconsin right now, so you have to make the best of what you can.
Right.
One of the other questions I have, kind of backwards now. We've talked a little bit about how the foods we eat maybe impact our Parkinson's symptoms. Is there anything with our Parkinson's disease that maybe impacts the overall nutritional health that we need to be concerned of?
Yes. So, you know, with Parkinson's, there can be become issues, difficulty with swallowing, what's known as dysphagia. So, and that's something to be aware of, because we want to be proactive rather than reactive with that, because when somebody has swallowing problems, they may naturally like reduce what they're eating and may lose weight. So I think it's key to kind of know what you're looking for with that. So symptoms of swallowing difficulty may be, you know, coughing with liquids frequently, coughing with meals, feeling the sensation that something's getting stuck, maybe complaining of like reflux, or a gurgly sounding voice might be another sign. So that would be something to discuss, bring forth to your neurologist if you're concerned about that you or your loved one may be showing signs, because then we can intervene early, you know, meet with a speech therapist, perhaps get a video evaluation, a video swallow study to really see what's going on there, and then adjust the diet as we need to. And so that can be really key. So that would be one thing, one flag from Parkinson's. The other thing would be, you know, the constipation can really impact appetite, and it also contributes to weight loss. If somebody's having any issues with depression or appetite loss, that can really compound everything and lead to weight loss. So we're really trying to intervene quickly on all of those things. So if you're concerned about any of that, or you're noticing your weight trending down, to really communicate well with the team. If somebody is losing weight, things we do from a diet perspective are to, you know, perhaps modify the texture. Maybe if steak is causing issues with swallowing, we're doing more ground beef kind of meals. So we can still get the protein and calories we need, but just in a different form. We're looking at doing smaller, more frequent meals, perhaps if there's fatigue with the meal, or supplementing with some of those high calorie, high protein beverages that are available in the store, or making homemade smoothies, that kind of thing. Sometimes early in Parkinson's too, we can see like the opposite, like people gain weight with side effect of medications or reduced physical activity. So there, you know, my push for increasing the fruits and vegetables can really help with weight management and selecting the leaner proteins and less of the sweet stuff, I guess, unfortunately.
And that's a great point. I mean, no matter whether you have Parkinson's or not, as we get older, our diet becomes more important. And I think if you add, we're getting older, now we have Parkinson's, that's reduced our movement or our mobility, the diet, whether it's more fruits and vegetables, more fish and things like that, becomes very important to maintain activity and help with the symptoms.
Yeah, agreed.
Excellent. Well, I think you've covered a lot of my questions, a lot of the things I hear Is there anything you see in the clinic that we haven't touched on that you're like, you know, I get asked this all the time and I really want to make sure I touch on this point?
I really don't think so. I think we really covered a lot. The supplement one comes up quite a bit, and the protein. And I think we've really covered our bases here, Jeremy, don't you?
I think so, Michelle. I think you've done a really good overview of everything. And it is, I'm with you. When I'm at a support group, at least one person comes up to me every time and says, what's this protein absorption thing? And it's one of those weird ones where it doesn't affect everybody the same way, but it's something we should all be aware of.
Right. Yes.
And then the supplements is the same thing. So I was like, well, why doesn't my doctor want me taking this supplement? And you know, I've always told them, like, you need to check, because how is it counteracting the medication or some of the other things? Because supplements aren't always regulated. So we don't always know exactly what's in those supplements. So it's important to know before you start putting them in your body.
Yep, exactly. Agree 100%.
So let me refresh one question, you know, before I conclude. You're at Froedtert Hospital.
Yes.
So if they ever want to meet with you, or they see one of the doctors there and they'd like a referral to you, what information would they need to do to find you at Froedtert to have some questions about their diet or the nutrition intake?
Well, so it would be a conversation with their doctor at Froedtert. At this time, I can only meet with people who are followed by a Froedtert physician. So if upon that discussion they decided, yes, yeah, meeting with a dietitian would be a great idea, then your physician kind of takes over, puts in the referral through the system, and then gives you the phone number to schedule.
Thank you. And I think that's good for them to know, whether you're in Milwaukee at Froedtert or not. Always, if nutrition and all these things do come up, talk to your doctor. There probably is somebody within the system that you can meet with, who aren't as great as Michelle was today, but there may be other people who are awesome. So, all right.
You're having cabin fever, I can tell.
Well, we all are, aren't we, Michelle? So with that, I'm going to thank Michelle for her time today and really for providing information and resources on nutrition and Parkinson's disease. Really, really great information. We appreciate it. Want to remind everybody, while we are practicing social distancing right now, please check in with the WPA regularly. We are frequently updating our website and Facebook page with exercise classes, educational videos such as this one, and a number of other resources for you to stay safer at home. You can email us at mail@wiparkinson.org with future topics you'd like to see covered by our local experts or questions you have on the topics we have covered. Thank you again to Michelle for being our guest today. Thank you for joining us. Take care and be safe.